Black smoke, the signal there will be no new pope named tonight. I'm Linsey Davis here at the Vatican for a special edition of ABC News Live Prime. The doors of the chapel closed shut, the conclave now underway. Those cardinals are sequestered, one ballot down, and no new pope. The mystery, the intrigue, as the world waits to learn what's going on behind those closed doors. The breaking news back at home. Not guilty. The verdict handed down in the state trial over the killing of Tyre Nichols. The family shocked and outraged tonight. The new warning from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and how it could impact you, and what the Fed today decided about interest rates. The major change for millions of airline passengers, Real ID is now in effect. Will airlines still allow you to board without it?
You're expecting the number of students poisoned by lead to grow?
Yes.
The concerning developments in some Milwaukee schools and what's being done to address possible lead issues. And tonight, fantasy sports, papal style. There's a burgeoning betting market, and our Maggie really has more on the front runner, at least according to the odds makers, the money being gambled as we await the next pope.
From ABC News, this is Prime with Linsey Davis, reporting tonight from the Vatican.
Good evening, everyone, from St. Peter's Square. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We are here in Vatican City for the historic papal conclave as the world watches the centuries-old ritual of electing the next pope. Tens of thousands of faithful stood for hours today here in St. Peter's Square, watching for smoke from this chimney that billowed black just before 9 o'clock local time, signaling from the voting cardinals inside the Sistine Chapel that they had not yet chosen the leader of the Holy See on the conclave's crucial first day. 133 cardinals will resume their secretive ritual tomorrow, sequestered and without access to the outside world until they can declare their inspired choice. The pageantry of this sacred duty, connecting ancient tradition to our modern times. But how will Pope Francis's legacy shape the next papacy? And will the next pope take up his mantle? Our James Longman introduces us to one of the newest cardinals, and Inside the Vatican podcast host Colleen Dully will join us in a moment. But first, here's a look at the clandestine tradition that is the conclave. The world watching that chimney for hours today as the centuries-old tradition is now underway. And around 9 p.m. here in Vatican City, black smoke poured out from atop the Sistine Chapel. At this hour, there's no consensus just yet on who will be the next pope.
Waiting a long time is kind of disappointing to see the black smoke.
The things that really important in my life, and this is something that is really important in my life.
Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow to see the smoke again, and hopefully we see who's the new papa.
And now thousands of onlookers from St. Peter's Square will have to wait until tomorrow to see if white smoke will rise to the heavens, signaling that the cardinals have reached a majority in electing a new pope. Up to 4 voting sessions a day are expected, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. The first day of the conclave began with prayer and song from underneath Michelangelo's famed frescoes. More than 100 cardinals from around the world, nearly 80% of them appointed by the late Pope Francis, making for the most diverse conclave ever. Each of the 133 voting cardinals taking a solemn oath of secrecy and fidelity in Latin, not to reveal how they voted. And then a declaration.
Extra omnes.
Everybody out. Everyone who is not a voting cardinal ushered out. The giant medieval doors shuttered. No cameras, priests, or reporters allowed as the secretive voting process commenced. Leading up to this conclave, for the past several days now, we've seen the cardinals partake in what's known as the general congregations, as they're free to wander around the square, eat at restaurants, and speak outside the Vatican walls. Of the 135 cardinals under the age of 80 and eligible to vote, only 133 will do so.
It's to prevent a gerontocracy. They want a little more younger thinking, and in the church, under 80 constitutes younger.
2 cardinal electors from Spain and Kenya will not participate, citing health concerns. Conducting the centuries-old process shrouded in mystery, derived from Latin conclave, which means with key, as they lock themselves in the chapel, removed from the outside world.
The Pope is dead. The throne is vacant.
The secretive process was dramatized in this year's Oscar-winning film Conclave.
We're about to choose the most famous man in the world.
And 1.25 billion souls watching.
A political thriller fictionalizing what happens behind closed doors after a pope dies. And reports some cardinals even watch the film to prepare. Like the film, the tradition has taken place in Michelangelo's iconic Sistine Chapel for the last 500 years.
There are some incredible historical stories about conclaves that have gone on for years. That is not normal practice, though. Ordinarily, especially in the modern era, conclaves usually take under a week. The last few have just been a matter of days.
During the election process, cardinals are completely cut off from the outside world. They will sleep and eat in the Santa Marta guest house, located a few minutes from the Sistine Chapel, inside the Vatican walls. Each cardinal will have a private room and bathroom.
They're really cut off from all communication. They're not allowed to have their cell phones. They have to turn that in at the beginning of the conclave, and it's stored in the Casa Santa Marta. The cardinals are under pain of excommunication if they ever release information about their votes, about the ballot counts.
In addition to the cardinals, about 70 other people are allowed into the Santa Marta house to assist them. People like doctors, cooks, and housekeepers, who are all required to take a solemn oath of absolute and perpetual secrecy. Each cardinal receives a ballot with the phrase, "I choose as Pope," written in Latin with a blank line for them to write in their candidate. In order of seniority, cardinals take their ballot up to the front of the chapel and then place it into an urn. The ballots are then mixed up to ensure anonymity, taken out one by one and read aloud so that each cardinal can keep his own tally. A 2/3 majority is needed for a pope to be elected. The ballots are then thrown into the top part of this stove and burned, as all eyes turn to the chimney of the Sistine Chapel for the results revealed in a plume of smoke. Black smoke indicates the vote was inconclusive. White smoke for a new pope. Chemical pellets have been added to the stove to ensure the smoke is the correct color.
It's an electric atmosphere when that white smoke goes up, and I think everyone is very relieved. Of course, that's only the beginning, because after that you have to wait even more for the name to be announced, and then even longer for the actual pope to come out.
The Pope-elect is then asked by the Dean of Cardinals if he will accept the nomination and requests the name he wishes to go by. The new pope's white papal garments are already awaiting his election. Small, medium, and large sizes all hang in the Room of Tears, as it's known, where he will come to get changed, pray, and perhaps, as tradition implies, to weep. Then on the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square, the Deacon of Cardinals announces.
Habemus Papam.
Latin for "We have a Pope." The Pope steps onto the balcony to finally reveal himself as the new leader of the more than 1 billion Catholics worldwide. 12 years after Pope Francis first stepped onto that balcony, the People's Pope, as he was known, remaining true to himself until the end. Next night, our James Longman has been here with me following the conclave. Even before we arrived, you've been chasing down the cardinals, and he spoke with one of the newest cardinals, an Ecuadorian. What do we know about him?
Yeah, Luis Herrera. He was made a cardinal by Francis in December of last year, so one of the very newest cardinals among the 108 that we know that Francis chose. Very excited to be here. He wasn't telling me who he was going to vote for, but you get a sense of what it meant to him to be here. So tell me, what has congregation been like?
Bueno, en las congregaciones, cada cardenal tuvo la oportunidad de hablar sobre un tema, sobre un aspecto, de tratar de identificar cuáles serían los rasgos del nuevo pastor, del nuevo papa. Y lógicamente ahí quedaba muy en claro que debe ser una persona apasionada por Jesús, por su evangelio, una persona también muy apasionada, que ama profundamente a la gente sencilla, a los pobres, aquellos que son siempre marginados, postergados. Otro tema que se ve con muchísima fuerza es el diálogo. Aprender a conversar y a conversar con personas de diferente posición religiosa, social, económica, cultural, de tal manera que en el diálogo podemos comprendernos mejor.
Do you think the new Pope will be like Francis in that way, someone with his charisma?
Bueno, aquí decimos cada persona es única. No habemos copias o fotocopias. Lógicamente, cada quien tiene su personalidad, su manera de ser, y ese será el aporte.
What are you most looking forward to in Conclave?
Bueno, el hecho de la palabra cónclave, estar encerrados, incomunicados, para muchos se lleva a pensar que se trata de algún secretismo, algo misterioso, algo escondido. No, no. Lo que se trata es de garantizar la libertad plena, la libertad interior, de tal manera que uno pues no esté bajo la presión de intereses económicos, políticos, religiosos, sin miedo. Entonces yo lo que espero es un ambiente de mucha serenidad, de mucha paz, donde podamos todos los cardenales descubrir lo que el Señor pide, lo que el Señor nos está llamando.
You must be excited. I mean, you're about to go into conclave. Once in a lifetime, maybe.
Claro, para mí es una gracia, una bendición. Yeah. Algo impensable, algo que jamás soñé en mi existencia. Entonces yo creo que voy con ese corazón abierto, como digo, para escuchar al Espíritu Santo y que Él haga maravillas.
And so now he has his first conclave, first night at least, under his belt.
Yeah, that's right. He was such a sweet man, so excited to be here. You know, this is an individual who represents everything that Francis stood for, a man from the peripheries. He really was the face of Francis's church. But he said to me something that a lot of the cardinals said to me, which was that they were going into this with an open heart. They hadn't made their minds up yet. But now he has. Now he's voted for someone. What moved him? Who did he choose? Why did he choose that person? Was it because he was influenced by other cardinals more senior than him? I mean, every decision here is just so fascinating.
And what is the quote? Go in a pope, come out a cardinal. You have to imagine a number of these men have a lot to think about tonight.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, there have been all kinds of people predicted as front runners, but this first vote, so important. It sets the stage. It gives them all a sense of where they are. And one of them, at least, maybe some of them, have votes. And they're going to bed tonight, lying in bed in Santa Marta thinking, I've got the most votes among my peers. And they know it. They will be there thinking, what's going to happen tomorrow? Do I want more votes? Do I want to get the attention off me? Do I want my colleagues to take the votes from me? I mean, all of these decisions are fascinating. And necessarily, Linsey, and this is what I find so interesting, each of these men, they will have to change their votes at some point. And what causes them to change a vote? I mean, what I wouldn't give to be a fly on the wall tomorrow morning at breakfast at Santa Marta, because they are going to be talking about it over their meals tomorrow morning.
To be in the room with these gentlemen. All right, James, we thank you so much as always. As we've been reporting, the next pope will need 89 votes in order to pass the threshold to become the next pope. And while we use terms like vote, it's worth remembering that this is not some political convention. The idea is that God, as the Holy Spirit, is moving and inspiring the cardinals with their choice. And so the cardinals are said to enter the chapel spiritually and prayerfully, even though cardinals are sworn to secrecy about voting proceedings at the threat of excommunication. People do talk. Colleen Dully knows that better than most. She's been listening intently to it all. Colleen, of course, associate editor at America Magazine and host of the Inside the Vatican podcast. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay, so when we look back at Pope Francis, when he was a cardinal, though he was on the short list, he really wasn't considered to be a top contender. So there are some surprises here that happened at the conclave. That, of course, was 12 years ago. Give us a sense of what you're hearing now as far as that short list.
Sure. Well, certainly everyone agrees that there are two frontrunners going into this conclave. So we have Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who's the Secretary of State, kind of a career diplomat, very little pastoral experience, though. And then Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who's this very charismatic Filipino cardinal. He'd be Francis 2.0, basically. And then the question is, if the votes are split between those, who could emerge in that third position and ultimately take the lead? And there are several names being floated there. That's kind of an open playing field. One that we could talk about, though, is Cardinal Matteo Zuppi. He's kind of competing for the Italian support with Parolin. But Zuppi is, he's a member of this group that's very concerned with helping the poor. He's kind of a street priest. He's known in the streets of Trastevere over here as Don Matteo. He rides his bike around. He's kind of like a tall, goofy guy. So he would be a very lovable pope. I think there is some hesitance among the College of Cardinals to elect someone who is a member of Sant'Egidio, which is, it's just a lay movement that has not changed leadership in a long time, and so they'd be concerned about sort of undue influence from them.
You mentioned Parolin, but he doesn't have a lot of pastoral experience, which traditionally the Pope does.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, certainly Francis had tons of that. John Paul II had a lot of that. Benedict, not as much. He was more of a scholar, a professor. So it can be done. And there is a saying in Rome that a fat pope follows a skinny pope, right? Essentially, you want somebody who has different skills, maybe a different kind of personality, and that there's often kind of a back and forth. So I could see them going more scholarly, maybe less pastoral.
Of course, this is a very secretive, clandestine process. Are you hearing anything? Are there any tea leaves that are out there at all?
I mean, it's so early in the process. So no, very, very little right now. I did hear that maybe the reason for the smoke delay today, which took more than an hour longer than 2013's first smoke did, may have been because the preacher of the papal household, Raniero Cantalamessa, who was giving a reflection as soon as they went inside, spoke for 50 minutes rather than 15, which fits with what I know of how Cardinal Cantalamessa preaches.
Pope Francis, of course, has been getting a lot of recognition for making this the most diverse body of cardinals. Any sense of how that might influence their choice of the next pope?
Sure. Well, I think there's certainly much more openness to, again, a pope from maybe Africa or Asia, where the church is growing. But there's also, this sense that if you bring in somebody from the outside, they're going to need a good team around them. So that's something the cardinals were talking about in their very last meetings before going into the conclave is, maybe we should switch to a model where the pope is not governing alone so much.
Give us a sense of age, because there were some people who were saying, oh, this one is a top contender. And then I was looking at, he's 79. Isn't that really too old? Or another who's 60. Isn't that really too young? What role does age play?
Yeah, certainly. It would be very rare for the cardinals to elect someone who is not in the room with them. Remember, you can't be voting unless you're over 80. Unless you're under 80.
Right.
Yeah. So someone over 80 would be seen as maybe not having the energy or maybe the permanence to carry through the changes that they want to see. On the other hand, if you choose someone maybe under 70, that's seen as too long of a pontificate, and very few people want to have a long pontificate like John Paul II's.
Do you see the next pope, and again, this is asking you to pull out your crystal ball, as a referendum on Pope Francis, or perhaps are they looking for a Pope Francis II?
I would say that every conclave is a referendum on the previous papacy. But my sense from among the College of Cardinals is that there is widespread support for continuing a lot of Pope Francis's initiatives, continuing especially his image of the church as something that goes out, that reaches out, rather than the more Benedict model of a church that is smaller but maybe like purer in a sense.
All right, Colleen Dully, we thank you so much for your insight as always. Thanks. We turn now to the state of the economy, pointing to President Trump's tariffs and their resulting costs. Today, Ford said it will raise prices on some of its cars. And there was a new warning from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on what could happen to the U.S. economy if Trump's tariffs remain in place. Mary Bruce has the latest from the White House.
Tonight, a grim warning from the chairman of the Federal Reserve on what Americans should be bracing for if President Trump's trade war drags on.
If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment.
Today, Ford telling dealers it will soon raise prices on 3 of its cars by as much as $2,000, citing, quote, some tariffs we are facing. Ford says Trump's tariffs could cost the company $1.5 billion in profits. And it comes after GM reported it could see its own profits plunge by $5 billion. This is the impact of the president's 145% tariffs on products imported by China is being seen at the Port of Los Angeles, where the number of cargo ships arriving is down 32%. Chinese and American officials expected to meet for the first time this weekend in Switzerland.
China says in order to have substantive negotiations, you have to bring down your 145% tariffs. Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
On Capitol Hill, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent pressed on how these tariffs will impact young families. More than 70% of baby products like car seats and strollers are manufactured in China. By one estimate, prices could rise 30%.
Yes or no? Do you support an exemption to tariffs on items that parents need to care for their babies?
It is under consideration.
But when we took that question to the president, He brushed off the idea.
The Treasury Secretary just told lawmakers that a tariff exemption for certain baby items like car seats is under consideration. Will you exempt some products that families rely on?
I don't know. I'll think about it. I don't know. I really don't.
Are you concerned?
I want to make it nice and simple. I'm not looking to have so many exemptions that nobody knows what it's doing.
Well, Linsey, the president is withdrawing his pick for Surgeon General Dr. Jeanette Nesheiwat on the eve of her confirmation hearing amid pushback from far-right activists like Laura Loomer, who criticized her for being pro-vaccine. Instead, the president is nominating Dr. Casey Means. She's a holistic medicine specialist with ties close to Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Linsey.
Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
3 former Memphis police officers have been found not guilty on all 7 state charges they faced in the beating death of Tyre Nichols. The 3 hugged their attorneys when they heard the verdict read, but all 3 were convicted on federal charges. So what happens now? Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas joins us with the very latest. Hi, Pierre.
Linsey, those 3 former officers still face sentencing on federal civil rights convictions tied to the death of Tyre Nichols. But today, that state jury believed the defense argument that those officers specifically did not deliver the kind of blows that would have killed Nichols, whose beating was caught on their police body cameras. It was a beating so vicious that some compared it to the brutality cases of Rodney King and George Floyd. Today, those former officers relieved, seen here embracing in court. But tonight, the Nichols family is devastated. 2 other officers who prosecutors say delivered the majority of blows that killed Nichols had previously pled guilty to state and federal charges. It's a horrible case, but tonight, the criminal trials tied to Nichols are now over, Linsey.
All right, Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you. And let's bring in legal analyst Terry Austin. Terry, the jury just started deliberating yesterday, especially given the federal convictions. Are you surprised at all that the verdict came so soon?
Well, it didn't come too soon, but it is a surprise, Linsey, because I did not think with the existence of that video that we would get an acquittal. This was a unanimous decision. All 12 of these jurors decided that none of these individuals was guilty of the higher charge, which would have been that murder charge. And so they acquitted them actually on each and every charge. And so it's an interesting case to me when you have so much evidence and yet the jury comes back and they apparently did not believe that this was something that was intentional. They thought that there was a risk there, as the defense was arguing, and that because of the risk and the exposure, they're not guilty.
Could this help lead to their federal convictions being overturned, or perhaps when they're sentenced, could they get less time?
Well, I think that, and we don't know, this might impact the federal sentencing because now that they're acquitted, they can't be prosecuted again in state court. But perhaps it'll have an influence on that federal sentencing. The conviction there was for witness tampering, which is a much lesser charge and a much lesser sentence. They could get a few years for that, but I don't think that it's going to really affect the decision on the sentence in that case because it's so totally different, 2 different cases. So we'll see what happens, but right now these individuals are free to walk. They'll wait for their sentencing in the federal court. They may serve time there, but it won't be anything like it would have been had they been found guilty in this case.
So what about the Nichols family? Do they have any legal recourse that they could seek against these former officers?
Well, the mother, that's a very good point, is already bringing a civil action against the city, and it's for millions of dollars. And in fact, that case could now still proceed forward, and she could recover some funds from that. She has already been speaking to civil rights attorneys. We know for a fact that Ben Crump had a statement after this, and he and others have said that it was something that was unexpected.
Our thanks to Terry Austin for her insight and expertise. The Sean Combs sex trafficking and racketeering trial in New York is expected to have a jury seated by Friday. The judge currently has 45 prospective jurors in place. Among them is a woman who said that she saw the hotel security video of Combs attacking his then girlfriend, saying the video was, quote, shocking and violent. Both the prosecution and defense anticipate the jury will be finalized by the weekend. Opening statements would then be set for Monday. And a programming note, a daily show on the trial of Sean Diddy Combs called Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy, will premiere Friday, May 9th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC News Live, hosted by our own Eva Pilgrim. Be sure to tune in for that. Now to the rising tensions between India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed nations. Tonight, Pakistan is vowing it will retaliate after India launched multiple missiles against what it called terrorist infrastructure. That itself was in retaliation for a deadly attack on Indian tourists in Kashmir last month. Pakistani officials say at least 31 people were killed and 46 wounded in the latest strikes. India has vowed if Pakistan responds, India will respond. Now to the loss of a second F-18 fighter jet from the aircraft carrier USS Truman. Aviators ejected during a nighttime landing and the jet plunged to the bottom of the Red Sea. The $70 million aircraft is the second to be lost in just over a week. Here's ABC's Chief Global Affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, in a seemingly unprecedented series of mishaps on a U.S. aircraft carrier, another $70 million fighter jet plunging into the Red Sea, the fourth major incident in just months. This latest mishap occurring when the pilot of an FA-18 Super Hornet was attempting a nighttime tailhook landing on the USS Truman, but the jet ended up falling off the end of the flight deck instead. Both pilots ejecting, a rescue helicopter pulling them out of the water with only minor injuries. Just 8 days ago, another F-18 fell off the Truman as the jet was being towed. A third F-18 from the Truman was accidentally shot down by one of the other U.S. warships in the carrier strike group near the beginning of the deployment. And in February, the carrier collided with a cargo ship, causing significant damage. The Truman has been operating in the Red Sea since it arrived in the region in December, launching strikes against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Our thanks to Martha Raddatz. Real ID laws have taken effect and it's impacting airports across the country, but are passengers ready? ABC's Gio Benitez has the latest.
Tonight at airports across the nation, the Real ID law taking effect. Passengers now required to show their security-enhanced IDs at TSA checkpoints.
I'm already prepared with the Real ID.
From Philadelphia,
I'm a little stressed out, but right?
To Charlotte.
We made sure to bring our passports as well because didn't get a chance to have it done.
The TSA saying most travelers are arriving prepared with their Real ID or a sufficient alternative like a passport. People flooding DMVs nationwide to get those IDs. Our Alex Perez is at Chicago's Real ID Supercenter.
Deadline day is here, and take a look. The line, similar to what it's been like the last few weeks, about a block long, some lining up as early as 4 a.m.
But if you don't have a Real ID yet, officials say you can still fly for now.
We don't anticipate turning anybody away for not having Real ID compliant identification.
Our thanks to Gio. Police are now saying that the suspect facing charges for allegedly crashing through the gate of Jennifer Aniston's home did so intentionally. Now authorities are searching for a motive. ABC's Trevor Ault has the latest.
Tonight, authorities charging 48-year-old Jimmy Wayne Carwile with felony stalking and felony vandalism, holding him without bond for allegedly ramming his gray Chrysler PT Cruiser through the gate to Jennifer Aniston's house.
The suspect, male white, is on the ground out of the vehicle. The suspect had drove the vehicle through the front gate.
Police in Los Angeles swarming the home of one of the biggest celebrities in the world.
The gate is possibly bent when we come around.
Security pinning Carwile to the ground. Officials say they believe he targeted Aniston's home intentionally. Authorities now searching for a motive, looking at his social media, where they say he's posted dozens of disturbing posts about Aniston going back at least a year. Carwile was originally from Mississippi. His childhood friend Marty Merritt says during the pandemic, he changed.
Jimmy went from being a good, average, hardworking, loving family man to a person that no one could recognize anymore.
Our thanks to Trevor Ault. Tonight, actor Michael Pitt is facing charges for alleged sexual abuse in New York City. He's best known for his roles in Boardwalk Empire and Dawson's Creek. Prosecutors say an alleged victim has accused him of sexual abuse, assault, and strangulation from incidents that occurred in 2020 and 2021. His attorney calls the claims baseless, saying Pitt and the alleged victim were in a consensual relationship at the time. Pitt has pleaded not guilty. Coming up, struggling drugstore chain Rite Aid is in bankruptcy again. What you need to know is the company says all locations will eventually close or be sold. And nearly 70,000 public school students in Milwaukee may have been exposed to lead. 4 cases of lead poisoning from dilapidated school buildings have already been confirmed And now the health officials that would normally jump in to help have been fired.
You feel so helpless when you don't know what kind of impact exactly this may have had on your child.
Welcome back, everyone. Milwaukee is battling a problem in its public schools. We're talking about lead paint. Used decades ago, it is a well-known cause of health problems in children. Just today, the city held open testing for any children or their guardians who wanted it. Our Alex Perez reports now from Milwaukee on the more than 100 schools there that need to be inspected after children this year were found to have been poisoned.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Like most busy moms, Kat says our mother of 6-year-old twins is stretched thin.
Ready? Can we cross the street?
Now adding to that stress, concerns about lead at her kids' Milwaukee school building.
We put a lot of faith in our institutions, in our schools. It's just so disheartening when those systems fail.
Their school closed for 2 weeks. Her kids among the 68,000 in Milwaukee's public schools that may have been exposed to lead in paint and dust in deteriorating buildings. District-wide testing this year uncovering 4 confirmed cases of lead poisoning, 3 more cases under investigation. 9 schools so far impacted, some forced to temporarily close. For more than 6 weeks, students at this school have had to attend classes at a different school because of lead paint in the building. Officials say 106 out of the district's 156 buildings need to be repainted and inspected. Ingesting lead paint is especially dangerous for young children and can cause growth delays, attention disorders, and even brain damage.
And then here, let's put that in your backpack too.
Testing revealed Kat's kids thankfully did not have lead poisoning, but the CDC says no level of lead is safe for children. Kat now worrying about the lasting impact of even low levels, which could also be a concern.
You feel so helpless when you don't know what kind of impact exactly this may have had on your child.
Buildings in the United States built before 1978 used lead paint, but if properly maintained and repainted, the risk is diminished. Milwaukee, like many aging cities, no stranger to the problem. The city's public health commissioner, Mike Totoritis, says every year about 1,200 kids are referred to the department for possible lead poisoning after exposure in their homes or other buildings.
I have an old home that was built in the 1900s, and I think about that on a regular basis, and putting my feet in a parent's shoes who also have their students in these schools, thinking, hey, I'm sending my kid to the school. It should be safe. It should be free of lead hazards. And unfortunately, that's not what we found. We found that systemic issues of poor maintenance and poor cleaning that really put students at danger.
That upkeep, according to the new Milwaukee schools superintendent, had for years not been happening, allowing layers of lead paint to chip and crack through.
Underfunding in schools for many, many years has really put districts at a very difficult choice of whether they should, have teachers in the classroom and lower class sizes or have a paraprofessional to support, or whether they paint a wall.
Further complicating things, recent Trump administration cuts to nationwide health programs, including the dismissal of a CDC team of lead experts that, if not for the cuts, would have been in Milwaukee working with the city's public health team.
Not every department has internal expertise in every health issue that our country faces, and we rely on the federal government for that expertise. So to see that eliminated overnight was hard to describe, to say the least.
Eric Svensson was the division director for that CDC department before it was eliminated and he was laid off. He says Milwaukee is now on its own. And other cities faced with environmental threats, from harmful wildfire smoke to water safety after flooding, will no longer be able to turn to the CDC for the same resources as before.
They're on their own. Our team that we were going to send out is not going to be able to go out in its entirety. We don't have the lead expertise to send. They're going to have to find a way to manage this outbreak on their own.
In Milwaukee, the school district now going building by building, making repairs and increasing lead testing in students. The city today sponsoring free testing for parents and students, saying the goal is to have all impacted buildings repainted by the end of 2025. Are you expecting the number of students poisoned by lead to grow?
Yes.
Did you get to go to the park today?
Parents like Kat still say there's a lot of blame to go around.
All right, let's go.
That gutted CDC team, a small part of it. but she says disheartening nonetheless.
Maybe that would have just been a little bit of help, but it really sends the message of you don't matter.
So many in desperate need of help. Our thanks to Alex Perez. A federal spokesperson tells ABC News the CDC's lead prevention work will be consolidated to a new still-to-come division, but no word on who will continue that work with all the experts still laid off. Coming up, much more from Vatican City, the big business. We're talking betting business on who will be named the next pope. And the numbers involving this conclave you need to know about. Welcome back, everyone. For the first time in 12 years, we have a conclave here at the Vatican. The long-standing traditions of finding the next pope are officially underway, and all eyes, including those of more than 1 billion Catholics worldwide, are on the chimney behind us here at St. Peter's Square. Let's take a look at what's happening now and what's still ahead. By the numbers, at least 250,000 people from around the world are expected to have made the trip here, enough to fill the square and perhaps surrounding streets. 4,000 security personnel, including police and military, are here to help things go smoothly as we wait, as well as 1,000 dedicated volunteers, all standing by as 133 cardinals sequester themselves and carry out the votes, the largest number of any previous conclave. Going forward, there will be as many as 4 votes held each day until someone reaches the 2/3 majority needed to become pope. There's no time limit on how long conclaves last. The longest on record was nearly 3 years. Yes, years for Pope Gregory X to be elected in 1271. In more recent times, they've been much shorter. It took just 2 days for each of the last 2 popes, Benedict XVI and Francis, to get the votes that they needed. How long this election will take remains to be seen, but ABC News Live will be here for you once that white smoke ultimately billows up to the heavens. Coming up, when wildfires tear through, they don't just destroy whole communities, they leave lasting physical damage to our bodies. What a new study shows about the dangerous impacts of wildfire smoke on the lungs. And meet Pope David, how one second-grade class learned about the papal election process with their very own conclave and Pope-mobile. One of the nation's largest drugstore chains, Rite Aid, files for bankruptcy. Smoke from wildfires can kill long after the flames have been put out, according to a new study. And 2 large American cities adopt the pride flag as official city flags. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Drugstore chain Rite Aid is filing for bankruptcy again, 8 months after emerging from a previous Chapter 11 filing. Rite Aid said in a statement that it plans to keep its stores open while it tries to sell off assets, so existing customers will not need to transfer prescriptions to other pharmacies. Rite Aid says it has secured almost $2 billion in new financing from existing lenders to stay operational during bankruptcy proceedings and plans to keep stores open for now. Smoke from wildfires driven by climate change contributed to about 15,000 deaths in the U.S. over a 15-year period. That according to a study published in the Nature journal Communications Earth and Environment. The study looked at dozens of wildfires from 2006 to 2020 and cross-referenced existing data on real climate conditions, finding deaths to be linked to small particle matter from wildfire smoke that can lodge deep into the lungs. A Florida woman was killed by an alligator during a canoeing trip with her husband, who tried to save her during the surprise attack, officials said. The two were canoeing in about 2.5 feet of water when the boat drifted over a large alligator, which then thrashed and tipped the canoe over, throwing the couple into the water. The wife's body has since been recovered. Salt Lake City and Boise, Idaho City Councils voted to make the pride flag an official city flag in response to state laws outlawing the use of unofficial flags. Boise council members stressed the flag would not replace the City of Boise flag that flies above government buildings, but simply allows the city to lawfully fly the flag within the bounds of the law. Following the passage of the resolution, supporters and protesters met outside where tense demonstrations took place. In other Utah news, goodbye Utah Hockey Club. Tusks up Utah Mammoth. After a 13-month process, Utah Mammoth was revealed as the new name and permanent identity for the NHL franchise based in Salt Lake City. Utah will also introduce a Mammoth-inspired mascot at home games next season. You usually graduate college with those who've seen you grow over 4 years. But college senior Sam Cooper walked the stage with someone who's been by his side since day one, his mom, Christy. The pair graduating from Grand Valley State University in Michigan. This wasn't Christy's first time in a cap and gown. In fact, it marked her 4th degree while Sam was earning his first. A moment of mutual pride.
She moved mountains for me and for my success and my educational journey. So it's really cool just to really finish off that journey with my mom.
Tomorrow, 133 cardinals will continue the traditional and highly secretive process of electing the next pope. Outside the walls of the Sistine Chapel, thousands around the world are placing bets, and online betting markets are seeing traffic in record numbers. As our Maggie Rulli reports, wagers on the next pope is big business.
And this is your whole Pope Fantasy League right here.
Yes. Fanta Pop-Up is Italy's answer to Fantasy League sports, papal style.
This game is a really fun game to play with friends and have a laugh.
Oh my gosh, they blink. Zupi blinked at me.
Alessandra Morisco tells us she's in a league with her 2 daughters.
The power of this app is that it fosters a sense of a community around this a big historical event.
Alessandra shows us how it works, creating a team of Cardinals, just like a fantasy football team. She picks Cardinal Paroline from Italy as her captain.
So I'm supporting him. It's a funny way of saying that, of course, I would like to have him as a pope, but it is not on me. It is the Holy Spirit that will decide.
And then 10 other top contenders. She can also predict what the new pope's first words to the public will be.
Carissimi means my dearest.
And what name he will choose.
The name will be Clemente.
And how many black smokes it will take before a new pope is elected.
At least 4 black smokes. At the 5th, we will have the new name.
The founders of Fanta Papa, Mauro Venetti and Pietro Pace, tell us they never expected it to take off like it has.
I mean, it seems like this has gone absolutely viral.
It's crazy for us. We developed a video game just for friends, you see, not for everyone in Italy, not everyone.
The two of them started working on Fanta Papa in February, rushing to get it out ahead of the conclave.
We don't even have a graphic designer. This is embarrassing, but there's no artist involved. No. And so the cardinals, for example, I made them. They look a bit like my dog.
Fanta Papa may have gone viral, but the tradition of betting on the Pope goes back centuries. Leighton Van Williams is a professor of economics. He says gambling on the next Pope isn't a new concept.
The records of betting on the Pope go back to 1503. And we've actually got the records of that conclave. The evidence is that there'd been betting well before that.
Was betting on the Pope one of the original betting markets, the original fantasy leagues, if you will?
I think so, basically. Roman bankers would take bets off merchants. They would get sort of tips from inside the conclave as to what might be going on. And they'd be able to set the odds.
And as seen in this New York Times article from 1878, gambling on the papal succession continued through the ages. Today, the Pope betting market is bigger than ever. The website OddsChecker says over 300,000 people from 140 countries have visited their site to check the odds. And even though you can't bet on the next pope with regulated sportsbooks in the U.S., OddsChecker estimates there has been over $17 million wagered on an unregulated site. They say Cardinal Paroline is currently the odds-on favorite, with Cardinal Tagle close behind. Zuppi and Pizza Balla round out the top 4. Some in the Catholic Church argue betting on who will be the next pope is indecent and shameful.
So I'm curious, as a Catholic, betting on the conclave, is there any Catholic guilt wrapped up in that?
I think can make stronger the relationship with our religion. While we wait, we can pray or play.
For Mauro and Pietro, they say Fanta Papa isn't about money. In fact, no money can be bet on their app.
If you win the Fanta Papa, you can have eternal glory, you know? Eternal glory. This is one important prize.
Eternal glory worth its weight in gold, I suppose. Our thanks to Maggie Rulli for that. As we await the results of the papal conclave in Rome, second graders in Georgia held a conclave of their own this week. Meet Pope David. Students at Pinecrest Academy participated in a mock conclave, an activity the Catholic school designed to teach students just what a conclave is and what goes into electing a pope. The second graders even went into their own make-believe Sistine Chapel to cast their votes, and Pope David got to take a ride around in his very own Pope Mobile. Looks like fun and educational. That is our show for this hour here in Vatican City. I'm Linsey Davis. ABC News is here with complete coverage of the conclave. I'm here along with David Muir and the team every step of the way. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Good night.